And then I realized people really don't understand what autism is. I'm Dr. Anna Krasno, and I'm here to reframe how you think about autism. I've been in the field of autism for over 15 years and currently work as the clinical director of a university-based autism center. My work includes assessment and support services for autistic people of all ages. In my experience, people tend to think that autism is in child clinics somewhere over there, or since so much of the field has focused on early diagnosis under the age of 5 for autism, that people don't even consider that they could be in spaces with autistic adults. But what we know right now is that there is likely an autistic person in any room of 1 in 36 people. Let that sink in. 1 in 36 people. For example, at your job, when you go to a restaurant or see a show, the people you pass in the grocery store or walking your dog. 1 in 36 people you interact with on a daily basis. When you start to widen your understanding of autism and how it presents, it will encompass more people. Like our understanding of autism, this number has been evolving over the years. Autism can present in many different ways, and what I want you to understand is that it can be a hidden diagnosis. People tend to think that autism can be seen. They think that by looking at someone, they can tell that they are autistic. We know this might be true for some presentations of autism, but we also know it can be hidden. We know it can be hidden in part because many autistic people work extremely hard to try and fit in with non-autistic social norms and expectations by learning social rules, scripting out conversations ahead of time, and performing socially in a way that does not feel like their true selves. This is called masking or camouflaging of autistic characteristics, and it can be both mentally and physically exhausting. This exhaustion comes from trying to figure out a world that isn't built for them. As I'm speaking to you now, my brain is able to put together my gestures and looking at you and thinking about my facial expression all pretty effortlessly. What I've heard from autistic adults is that those skills feel discrete. They don't feel like they naturally go together. And so having to put them all together is very effortful. And so it's a lot easier to talk to somebody if you're not also looking them in the eye. Or it's a lot easier to listen to someone if you aren't having to look directly at them to monitor their facial expressions. It is imperative to consider autism and neurodiversity in your job and life. Everyone should be thinking about autism, no matter where you work, where you live, or what you do. It's likely that you know an autistic person, or maybe you're related to an autistic person. You most likely work with an autistic person, or maybe you are autistic yourself, diagnosed or undiagnosed. My hope for you is to expand how you think about autism, and then you'll have a better understanding of how autism can present and how this applies to your life. I'm not autistic. My beliefs and values come from my work. I work with people of all ages, but over half my practice is working with young adults and adults for a first-time diagnosis of autism. The person sitting across from me has typically felt invalidated and dismissed their whole life. They may be misdiagnosed and feel that the diagnosis they do have doesn't fully explain their experience. They often have chronic mental health issues, sensory challenges, relationship ruptures, challenges obtaining higher education and maintaining a job, and they don't know why. They have been underestimated, and they have also felt misunderstood their whole life. Many providers diagnose the symptoms they can see and may not even consider what is at the root of these symptoms. This means that the autism will be missed when the person does not present with visible characteristics of autism. They come to me because I am passionate about accurate diagnosis with regard to autism, and also that I affirm neurodivergence. Before going any further, I want to talk about terminology. Autism has historically been spoken about using deficit-based language. This has led to stigma around the word autism and also to negative connotations. To destigmatize, we need to use more objective language instead of deficit-based language when we're talking about autism. Autism is a lifelong, inherited neurodevelopmental diagnosis that consists of social communication differences, difficulty forming, maintaining relationships, intense interests, repetitive behaviors, sensory differences, and a preference for sameness. It is a difference in brain wiring and a form of neurodivergence. The characteristics I just listed can present in many different ways. I get asked all of the time, where am I on the spectrum, or where is my child on the spectrum? I understand the information that someone is trying to hear from asking this question, based on their predisposed notions of autism, envisioning the spectrum as a line. I think asking where am I or where is my child on the spectrum is the wrong question. The autism spectrum isn't a line. I and others argue that it is much more like a circle, where each autistic person has their own unique circle. It's an ever-changing dynamic circle and shows that each person has multiple facets about themselves. At one point in their life, they may need support in some areas, and then 5 years later, they need support in different areas. So why has our view of autism been so narrow until now? Historically, autism research and clinical diagnosis has been focused on the presentation of primarily white, cisgender, assigned male at birth individuals in early childhood. This has led to diagnostician bias, and what I mean by that is if the diagnostician is sitting across from someone of really any other identity or any other intersection of identity, it is very common that autism is not considered, particularly if the person is verbal and makes eye contact. People I've worked with have been told by providers that they can't see their autism, and so they can't be autistic. And you can see how invalidating this might be to hear from a healthcare provider. We know that if someone makes eye contact and speaks, they can also be autistic. Misdiagnosis is extremely common, for example, among assigned female at birth individuals, BIPOC individuals, gender diverse and trans-identifying people, and any intersection of these identities. To explain that further, I've assessed teenagers who are assigned female at birth, who present with significant mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, obsessive-compulsive traits, maybe some cognitive rigidity, and suicidal thoughts. They are also verbal, make eye contact, and use gestures, so a provider might assume they cannot be autistic, and instead give several mental health diagnoses to account for the symptoms that can be seen. Receiving several mental health diagnoses means that this teenager's treatment recommendations and life trajectory has the likelihood of being very different than if the diagnostician had included an evaluation for autism. What I've seen time and time again is that autism is at the root of these visible symptoms, but is hidden. And without asking the right questions, it could be years or decades, or if at all, that this person learns about their autism. To be even more clear on this point, the mental health challenges are stemming from undiagnosed and unsupported autism. Constantly masking autistic characteristics can lead to autistic burnout, symptoms of depression, anxiety, and withdrawal. When someone is masking their autism, they are not showing who they truly are. Adults come to see me for testing despite having the verbal and cognitive abilities to obtain a college degree, establish relationships, and hold a job. They have significant difficulty doing so, and they don't know why. They see other people around them being able to do all of these things and wonder where everyone else got the manual to manage all of those responsibilities. They feel that something is broken in them. At the same time, they have so many talents and strengths to offer in relationships, workplace settings, but are often overlooked for employment that they would be well suited for due to social communication differences. When I give a diagnosis to adults, I have been told they are relieved and validated because now they know they are not broken. It's a difference in their brain wiring. Most importantly, this helps them have the language to describe their experiences and the language to share who they are with others. It can lead to feeling understood by others and can help them find spaces where they can feel safe to slowly unmask. There is an important shift happening in the field of autism that I want to share with you. We have been operating under the medical model for a long time of how we understand disability. Many operate under this model, but the language associated can be harmful. This is because the core assumption of the medical model is that there is a normal way of being, and anything different from that is inherently bad or flawed. That the person with the disability must be the one to change to fit in better with society expectations. A different way of thinking about this is called the neurodiversity paradigm. This puts forth that there is no normal way of being and that disability really results from a poor fit between the person and the environment. And it really places responsibility on the environment to change to support the needs of the person with the disability. That was a lot of information to take in. Let's talk now about what all of this means for you and then how this relates to your life and workplace. Employment settings need to be considering autism and neurodiversity in how they are running their businesses. Status quo ways of interviewing, communicating, working in groups, large Zoom calls all need to be rethought for the neurodivergent brain. Think about where you work. There are people around you who may be diagnosed or not yet diagnosed. Autistic adults have shared with me that the physical space of the office and desks in an open floor plan can be sensory and socially overwhelming, leading them to take multiple breaks throughout the day in their car or in the bathroom to recharge. This might even mean that they have to miss work the next day due to burnout. Small talk in meetings is exhausting and has even been described to me as painful. The fluorescent lights hurt their eyes, or a manager assumes they can read between the lines on a work task email, and they can't. And then they can't complete the work task, not because they can't do it, but because of their social communication differences. They are certainly qualified for the job description, but all the other pieces of the work can seem overwhelming. Now that you have this greater sense of awareness based on what I shared, I'd like for you to take a moment to self-reflect on this information. I invite you to consider autism and neurodivergence when you are interacting with people throughout your day. Work to build a culture of affirming neurodivergence where you work. Implement new strategies. These would likely benefit all employees, not just those who are autistic or neurodivergent. Think about the physical space of the office. What kind of lights are used? If there are spaces that are more separate and quiet that employees can go to recharge. Provide different seating options and maybe the ability to use noise-canceling headphones. Think about really clear communication, being specific about work assignments, explicit in emails and messages, and allowing for different forms or multiple forms of communication, like written in addition to verbal. Think about how last-minute schedule changes can impact others. Give advance notice when there'll be changes in scheduling or a social event put on the calendar that is mandatory for employees to attend. Think about all the inherent social demands that don't have to do with the job description. Allow for camera off during Zoom meetings if needed, the ability to opt out of icebreakers, and flexible break times to manage social overwhelm throughout the day. I want to bring you back to the current number of 1 in 36. Reframed, we see that autism can be a hidden diagnosis, and given the high prevalence, that there are autistic individuals in all of our spaces. It is so significant that you are here to listen to this today. By reflecting on changes you can make in your life, you are becoming more aware of this shift that needs to happen. And then, by reframing how you understand autism, you are actively contributing to a world that is more inclusive and affirming of everyone.